The station was loud with voices, ships roaring in and out, and the smell of burnt metal in the air. Daniel sat on a cold bench, waiting for his own transport that would not arrive for another hour. He was just an ordinary human traveler among hundreds of aliens, but that day was about to change his life. From the corner of his eye, Daniel noticed an old alien shuffling toward the ticket counter. Its skin was pale and cracked like stone, its clothes torn and dusty. The alien placed a few dull coins on the counter, but the machine blinked red. The alien tried again, its trembling hands pushing more coins forward. But it still was not enough. The crowd behind grew restless, some laughing, some cursing. No one cared for the old alien's struggle. They only wanted him gone. Daniel stood slowly, feeling something in his chest pull him forward. He walked to the counter and placed his own credits down. The machine blinked green, the ticket printed out, and the old alien's wide eyes turned to him. For a moment, silence fell between them. Then the alien reached out with both hands, taking the ticket as if it were made of gold. "Why would you do this, human?" the alien whispered in a voice dry like sand. Daniel shrugged. "Because you needed help." The alien's cracked lips curved into a strange smile, one that seemed too heavy with secrets. He leaned closer, his breath carrying a strange metallic scent. "You don't know what you've done, human," he whispered. And then he slipped away into the crowd. Daniel stood frozen, staring after him, his hand still resting on the counter. The words echoed in his mind, heavy and sharp. What had he meant? It was only a ticket, wasn't it? But something in the alien's eyes had not looked thankful. It had looked relieved, like a burden passed to another. He sat back down on the bench, trying to calm himself. The crowd soon forgot the scene. Voices rose again, merchants shouting, children crying, engines rumbling. But Daniel could not shake the weight in his chest. The station lights flickered for a second, and he thought it was only a power issue. Yet a shiver ran through him as if unseen eyes had turned toward him. Minutes crawled by, each one slower than the last. Daniel's gaze drifted across the waiting hall, the shining walls, the moving shadows. He noticed guards speaking urgently, their faces tense. He noticed families leaving the waiting lines, rushing their children out. Something was wrong, and he could feel it. Daniel pulled the strap of his travel bag tighter across his chest. He thought about leaving, about hiding, but his transport was still far from arrival. The lights flickered again, longer this time, and alarms began to hum faintly in the distance. Daniel rose to his feet, his heart beating harder now. He looked up at the wide glass ceiling of the station, at the dark space beyond, and then he saw it. Far above, the stars were gone, swallowed by something massive. 3 shadows stretched across the sky, silent but enormous. They grew larger with each heartbeat, and soon the sound came, the low thunder of engines that shook the ground. 3 warships, black and gleaming, descended toward the station. The crowd erupted in screams, people running in every direction, bags dropped, voices crying, alarms now screaming loud. Guards drew weapons but froze as the ships filled the sky. Blotting out the light, Daniel's chest tightened, his eyes wide. He remembered the old alien's words. "You don't know what you've done, human." His hand clenched into a fist, his breath sharp. Had that simple act of kindness drawn? These warships here? Why would 3 battleships arrive just after he gave away a ticket? The ground shook as landing lights pierced the windows, beams sweeping the crowd. Daniel looked down at his empty hands and wished he had never stood from that bench. Somewhere in the station, the old alien was gone. But Daniel knew he was not safe. Every instinct screamed that those warships were not here by chance. They had come for something, or someone, and somehow it was connected to him. The sound of engines grew louder, heavy like thunder rolling across the sky. The ceiling glass of the station shook, cracks spidering across its surface as the 3 warships descended. Daniel stood among the panicked crowd, his heart racing as beams of white light cut down through the chaos. Alarms screamed, security shouted orders, but no one listened. Everyone was running, pushing, and falling over each other. The ground shook as the first warship's landing strut slammed into the surface outside. Daniel pressed against a wall, trying to stay out of sight. His mind was racing with questions, but one thought burned like fire. The old alien's words. You don't know what you've done, human. Could it be connected? Could a single ticket really bring warships? It sounded impossible, yet the timing was too exact to ignore. Through the smoke and flashing lights, Daniel noticed something strange. The soldiers pouring from the warships were not looking at the crowd. They ignored the screaming merchants, the fleeing families, even the armed guards. Their glowing helmets turned in one direction only. Toward him, Daniel froze, his body refusing to move as dozens of armored figures stepped closer, their weapons raised. He clutched his travel bag tighter, backing away. No, 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 he whispered under his breath, his legs trembling. He thought of running, but the soldiers were already spreading to block exits. A heavy voice echoed through the station's speakers, harsh and metallic. Human male identified. Target located. Detain at once. Daniel's blood turned cold. The crowd gasped, realizing the warships had come for him. Hands pointed, whispers spread like fire. Why would an ordinary human be worth 3 warships? Daniel could not answer. He only knew he had seconds before they caught him. He broke into a run, his shoes slipping on the polished floor. Blaster fire lit up behind him, beams slicing through signs and pillars. Sparks flew as metal shattered. People screamed and scattered. Daniel dove behind a cargo container, his chest heaving. His mind screamed at him, "Move, keep moving." But as he looked at his bag, something sharp pressed against his palm. The old alien's ticket. It was inside, glowing faintly now. Daniel pulled it out, staring at the small piece of material. It wasn't just paper, it pulsed with strange light, ancient symbols shifting across its surface. For the first time, Daniel understood. This was no simple ticket. Over here. A voice hissed sharply. Daniel whipped his head around, spotting a figure in the shadows of a maintenance tunnel. It was a girl, small and alien, her skin silver blue and her eyes bright like fire. She waved frantically, motioning him to follow. Daniel hesitated, but the soldiers were closing in, weapons humming as they prepared to fire. With no choice, he ran, clutching the glowing ticket in his fist. The alien girl grabbed his arm and pulled him into the tunnel. They sprinted down the dark passage, the sound of boots and gunfire echoing behind them. Why are they after me? Daniel gasped, his voice raw. The girl looked at him with sharp eyes. Because you hold the passage, human, and they will kill anyone to take it back. Daniel stumbled, but kept running. What passage? This is just a ticket, he shouted. The girl shook her head, her grip tight on his arm. That is no ticket. It is a key, an old key tied to a bloodline you don't understand. The tunnel shook as an explosion tore open the ceiling behind them. Fire and dust rained down, soldiers dropping in from above. The girl shoved Daniel forward. Keep running. Her voice carried no fear, only command. Daniel's legs screamed in pain, but he forced them to move. The glowing ticket lighting the path ahead. They slid through a narrow hatch, metal grinding as the girl sealed it behind them. For a moment, silence filled the air, broken only by Daniel's ragged breaths. He leaned against the wall, sweat running down his face. What? What is happening to me? He whispered. The girl looked at him, her expression heavy with something between pity and urgency. You bought more than a ticket, human. You bought a war. Daniel's stomach twisted, his throat dry. He wanted to believe she was wrong. But outside the walls, the thunder of warships told the truth. He held the glowing ticket tighter, its light pulsing like a heartbeat. And he realized then, his life would never be the same. The tunnel walls shook with every explosion, dust falling from the ceiling like gray rain. Daniel stumbled forward, the alien girl tugging at his arm, her silver blue skin glowing faintly in the dark. Behind them, the heavy steps of armored soldiers echoed closer with every breath. The warships had not stopped. Their engines rumbled above like angry thunder, shaking the whole station. Daniel's lungs burned, his legs screamed for rest, but he forced himself to keep running. The strange ticket pulsed in his fist, glowing brighter as if alive, guiding them through the shadows. The girl looked at it with wide eyes, her face pale. You shouldn't have this, human. It belongs to a bloodline that isn't yours. Daniel snapped back, his voice sharp. I didn't ask for this, I only wanted to help an old man. A loud crash shook the tunnel. A squad of soldiers burst through a side door, their glowing rifles aimed. The girl shoved Daniel hard against the wall, just as beams of light ripped through the air. Metal hissed and burned where the shots landed, sparks flying in the dark. Daniel's heart pounded so hard he thought it would break his chest. The girl pulled a small weapon from her belt, a thin blade humming with strange energy. She moved fast, faster than his eyes could follow, slicing the air as two soldiers fell. Move! She shouted, and Daniel obeyed. They darted down another passage, narrow and filled with broken pipes. Steam hissed, burning Daniel's arm as he brushed too close, but he ignored the pain. His eyes kept darting back. The soldiers were still chasing, their boots like drums in the dark. Daniel clutched the glowing ticket tighter, every pulse of its light making him feel less like a man and more like prey. Finally, they reached a wider chamber, lit only by flickering lights. Daniel bent over, his hands on his knees, gasping for air. The girl looked around quickly, scanning every shadow. Her voice was sharp. They won't stop until they have it. You're carrying something they've hunted for centuries. Daniel's eyes widened, sweat dripping down his face. But why me? Why would that old alien give it to me? The girl's jaw tightened, her gaze hard. Because he was marked, and he passed the mark to you. Before Daniel could answer, another crash boomed behind them. A massive soldier stepped into the chamber, taller and heavier than the rest, his armor glowing blood red. He raised a weapon larger than Daniel's entire body, its hum filling the air with dread. Daniel froze, fear locking his legs. The girl stepped forward, blade ready, but Daniel knew she was too small to face such a giant. The soldier's voice growled through the mask. Human, surrender the passage. Daniel's grip on the ticket tightened until his knuckles turned white. Every instinct screamed at him to throw it away, to give it up and save himself. But deep inside, another voice rose, the same voice that had made him help the old alien. He shook his head, his teeth clenched. No, the red soldier roared, firing a blast that scorched the wall beside Daniel. The girl leapt, her blade cutting, a glowing arc, sparks flying as it struck the soldier's armor. The force knocked her back, crashing her into the ground. Daniel's chest tightened, rage burning inside him. He grabbed a broken pipe from the floor and swung it with all his strength. The pipe slammed into the soldier's mask, sparks flying. The soldier stumbled, growling in pain, but Daniel knew it wouldn't stop him for long. Run! The girl shouted, pushing herself up, blood on her lip. Daniel didn't argue. He grabbed her arm and pulled her toward another narrow tunnel. The soldier roared behind them, his heavy steps shaking the floor. Blaster fire lit up the passage, each shot missing them by inches. The air smelled of smoke and metal, the sound of death chasing them closer and closer. Finally, they burst out of the tunnel into a half-ruined maintenance bay. Ships that were once used for repairs now lay broken, wires hanging like vines. The girl pressed a panel on the wall, forcing it open, revealing another hidden path. Her voice trembled, but stayed strong. We can't keep running forever, human. If you don't choose, you'll die hunted. Daniel's hands shook, the glowing ticket pulsing like a heartbeat. He looked at it, then at her, his voice low but fierce. Then, help me fight. Her eyes widened, surprise flashing across her face. For a moment, silence hung heavy between them, broken only by the distant thunder of warships. Then she nodded slowly. If you really mean it, human, then you may survive this hunt. Daniel's chest rose with a deep breath, the weight of fear replaced by something stronger. He was no longer just a man who bought a ticket. He was prey turning into a hunter. The maintenance bay was quiet, filled only with the hum of dying machines and the distant rumble of warships above. Daniel leaned against the wall, his chest rising and falling like a hammer, his clothes soaked with sweat. The alien girl stood close, her silver-blue skin glowing faintly under the broken lights. Her eyes fixed on the ticket in his hand. Daniel lifted it, the strange piece of material pulsing like it was alive. Symbols shifted across its surface, glowing one moment and fading the next. It looked fragile, like old paper, yet it felt heavy, heavier than steel. Daniel's voice cracked as he asked, "What is this? Why are they chasing me for a piece of junk?" The girl's expression hardened, her eyes burning with urgency. "That is no junk, human. It is a key, an ancient key, and it does not belong to you." Her words cut deep, and Daniel clenched, his jaw. "I didn't ask for it, I only wanted to help someone." The girl took a step closer, her voice lowering. "And that small act may have changed everything. For you, for me, for entire worlds." Daniel stared at her, frustration burning in his chest. "Then tell me what it really is." The girl hesitated, her gaze flicking toward the sealed door behind them, the one soldiers would soon break through. Finally, she spoke, her voice trembling but steady. "It is called the Passage Seal, one of the oldest relics in our galaxy. It grants safe passage through every warship blockade, through every guarded border. No clan dares attack the bearer because it is tied to the royal bloodline of the Starborn." Daniel blinked, his mind spinning. Royal bloodline? Then why would an old alien give it to me? I'm not royalty, I'm not even from here. The girl's eyes narrowed, her voice sharper now. "That is the question, human. He must have been marked, and when he gave it to you, he passed the burden on." Daniel's throat felt dry. The memory of the old alien's smile returned, that strange look of relief. He whispered, "He wanted to get rid of it, didn't he? He gave it to me so he could escape." The girl nodded grimly. "And now you are hunted, the soldiers will not stop because whoever holds the seal can control destiny. And the warships outside, they belong to the clans who want it destroyed, before it falls into the wrong hands." Daniel's heart pounded, his mind screaming at him to throw it away, but his hands refused to let go. Every pulse of the seal felt like it was digging into his soul, binding him tighter with each beat. A sudden crash shook the bay, metal groaning as soldiers hammered at the door. Daniel flinched, fear crawling up his spine. The girl grabbed his arm, pulling him close, her eyes fierce. "Listen to me. You cannot run forever. You must choose. Either give it up or fight for it." Daniel shook his head, panic in his voice. "Fight with what? I'm no soldier." She leaned closer, her voice like fire. "You are human, you have something stronger than weapons, you have will." The door cracked, sparks flying as a red glow spread across its surface. Daniel looked again at the glowing seal, the shifting symbols almost spelling words he couldn't understand. His voice was low, trembling. "What if I fail?" The girl's grip tightened, her eyes never leaving his. "Then we both die, but if you choose to fight, we might live." The door burst open, soldiers pouring in, their armor shining, weapons aimed. Daniel's heart leapt into his throat, but the seal in his hand flared bright, blinding the room with white light. The soldiers staggered, their helmets flickering, their weapons failing. Daniel stared in shock. The seal pulsed in rhythm with his heartbeat, as if answering his fear with power, the girl shouted over the noise. "It responds to you, human, it accepts you." Daniel's chest tightened, the truth hitting him like a storm. The seal had chosen him, not by accident, not by mistake, but by something deeper. He raised it higher, its glow pushing the soldiers back, their roars drowned by the thunder of its power. But even as victory seemed close, Daniel's stomach twisted. If this key could command warships, if it could bend soldiers, then it was not only power, it was a curse. The girl's words echoed in his mind. "You bought more than a ticket, you bought a war." And Daniel realized that the war had only just begun. The maintenance bay was no longer safe. Smoke filled the air. Sparks fell from broken wires, and the sound of soldiers pounding against steel doors grew louder. Daniel held the glowing seal tight, its light still pushing back the soldiers, but his strength was fading, his arms heavy, his mind burning with fear. The alien girl pulled him toward another corridor, her voice sharp with urgency. "We must move. The seal cannot protect us forever." They rushed down the narrow passage, their footsteps echoing in the dark. Daniel's heart raced with every step, his mind still spinning from the power he had seen. The seal had answered him. It had chosen him. And yet he still felt like a man far too small for such a burden. Finally, they reached a hidden chamber, tucked deep under the station. There, a small group of aliens waited, their eyes glowing in the shadows, their weapons drawn. Daniel froze, But the girl stepped forward, lowering her blade. "They are with us," she said, her voice calmer now. The group bowed slightly, their faces respectful as they looked at the seal in Daniel's hand. One of them, tall with dark scales along his arms, stepped closer. His voice was deep. "The passage seal lives. We thought it lost forever, and now it rests with a human." Daniel frowned, tightening his grip. "I didn't ask for it. I don't even understand it." The scaled alien nodded slowly. "Then perhaps fate chose better than we could." But even in that moment of uneasy safety, Daniel felt something wrong. The way one of the aliens in the back shifted nervously, the way his eyes darted toward the sealed door. The girl noticed it too, her gaze narrowing, her hand moving closer to her blade. "Stay close," she whispered to Daniel. The scaled alien motioned to a narrow stairway. "Come, there is a shuttle hidden below. It will take you away from this station, far from the warships." Daniel's chest lifted with a breath of relief. Finally, a way out. But before he could move, a sharp beep echoed through the chamber. Daniel's eyes darted to the nervous alien at the back, his wrist glowing with a red signal device. The girl hissed, her voice like steel. "Traitor!" The doors behind them shook violently, red light seeping through as soldiers cut their way inside. The nervous alien stepped forward, his eyes desperate. "I had no choice. They promised safety. They promised to spare me." Daniel's blood boiled, his voice raw. "You doomed us all for your own skin." The traitor's face twisted with shame, but he raised his weapon anyway, aiming it at Daniel. The girl moved, like lightning, her blade slicing through the air, sparks flying as the traitor's weapon clattered to the floor. But it was too late. The signal had been sent, and the doors finally burst open. Dozens of armored soldiers stormed in, their red visors glowing in the smoke. Blaster fire filled the chamber, beams of light scorching walls and cutting through stone. The rebels fought back, their weapons clashing, the room turning into a storm of fire and screams. Daniel ducked, behind a broken console, clutching the seal to his chest. The light of the seal pulsed, stronger now, almost blinding. It was as if it sensed the danger, as if it wanted to fight. Daniel's heart pounded, his voice trembling. "What do you want from me?" The seal answered with a surge of light, pushing the soldiers back, but Daniel felt the weight of it tear through his veins, draining his strength. The girl fought fiercely, her blade cutting down soldier after soldier, but she was outnumbered. Daniel saw her stumble, a blast grazing her shoulder, her body falling to the ground. His heart leapt in his throat, rage burning hotter than fear. He stood, raising the seal high, its glow exploding like a star. Soldiers staggered, blinded, their weapons failing, the entire chamber shaking under the force. But the cost was heavy. Daniel's knees buckled, his vision blurred, his body screaming. For rest, the scaled alien grabbed him, pulling him toward the stairway. "Go, human, go now." Daniel tried to resist, his eyes fixed on the girl lying on the ground. But she raised her head weakly, blood staining her lips. "Go," she whispered, her eyes fierce despite the pain. "Live, or this all means nothing." With a broken heart, Daniel allowed himself to be dragged down the stairway, the roar of battle fading behind him. The seal's light dimmed as his strength waned, but even in weakness it pulsed, alive and unyielding. Daniel knew then betrayal had already poisoned this fight, and if he was to survive, he could trust no one but himself and the girl. And as the shuttle came into view in the shadows below, Daniel swore to himself he would not run forever. If the galaxy wanted him hunted, then one day he would become the hunter. The shuttle bay was dark, dust rising from the ground and the air thick with the smell of burnt metal. Daniel stumbled forward, dragged by the scaled alien, his body weak, but his mind still burning with rage. Behind him, the sounds of battle. Still thundered screams, blasts, and the roar of collapsing walls. The girl was still back there, bleeding but fighting, and every step Daniel took away from her felt like a knife in his chest. The scaled alien pushed him toward the shuttle, a small craft hidden under a tarp, its engines silent. "Board now, human," the alien growled. "If you stay, you will die." Daniel shook his head, his fists tight, the seal pulsing in his palm. "I'm not leaving her," he said, his voice sharp despite the pain in his lungs. The alien's eyes narrowed, his scales glinting under the dim light. "You carry the seal. You are more important than one fighter. If you die, all hope dies." Daniel's jaw clenched, his mind screaming with conflict. He could run. He could save himself, but he saw the girl's face in his mind, her fierce eyes, her voice telling him to fight. And he knew he could not abandon her, not now, not ever. He stepped back from the shuttle, shaking his head. "If the seal is mine, then my choice matters, and I choose to fight." The scaled alien's mouth curled in anger. "You're a fool, human." But before he could grab Daniel again, the bay doors exploded inward. Flames rushed across the floor, and soldiers poured in, their armor glowing red under the fires. Light. The warships above roared, sending down beams that lit the bay like daylight. The choice was no longer distant. It was here. Fire surrounding him, soldiers closing in, death waiting at his feet. Daniel lifted the seal, its glow stronger than ever. Burning his hand with its power, the soldiers shouted in unison, "Surrender the passage!" Their voices mechanical, inhuman. Daniel's breath shook, but his voice was loud. "No!" Blaster fire erupted, beams tearing through the air, sparks filling the bay. Daniel ducked, rolling behind a broken engine, his heart pounding like thunder. The scaled alien drew his weapon and fought, his strike strong, but the soldiers outnumbered them. Daniel peeked out, sweat stinging his eyes, fear clawing at his chest. He could run into the shuttle, escape, but his feet refused to move. He thought of the girl still fighting above, bleeding but alive, and something inside him snapped. With a roar, he raised the seal high, its glow exploded, a blinding wave that forced every soldier to stumble. Symbols flared across the floor, strange markings burning into the ground. Daniel felt the energy tear through him, filling his veins with fire, his voice breaking in a scream. But instead of death, strength surged in his arms, his fear turning into fury. The soldiers steadied themselves, weapons aimed again. But Daniel did not hide this time. He stepped forward, the seal pulsing like a star in his hand. The closest soldier fired, but the beam bent away, deflected by the seal's light. Daniel's eyes widened, his breath sharp. He could feel the seal protecting him, answering his will. The scaled alien shouted, "Use it, human, it obeys you." Daniel's body shook as he raised the seal higher. The glow spread like fire, engulfing the bay, pushing the soldiers back step by step. But with every pulse, pain seared through his body, his muscles burning, his vision blurring. It was power, but it demanded a price. The soldiers roared, firing again and again, their blasts striking walls, breaking metal, filling the air with flames. Daniel's knees buckled, but he forced himself to stay standing. His voice cracked but strong. "If you want it, come and take it from me." The soldiers surged forward, and Daniel charged, not with weapons, not with armor, but with the seal's light blazing around him. Every step shook the ground, every pulse of the seal burning brighter. The scaled alien fought beside him, his roars echoing through the flames. Together they pushed the soldiers back step by step through fire and smoke. But even as the battle raged, Daniel knew this was only the beginning. The seal was powerful, but it was killing him slowly, draining him with every use. He could not fight forever. He had to choose, escape or destruction. The flames roared higher. The shuttle shook as debris crashed from above. Daniel's chest heaved, his arms trembling, his vision dimming. He looked at the scaled alien, then at the seal, then at the burning bay filled with enemies. The choice was clear. He could run and survive, leaving the fight behind, or he could burn with the fire, fight until the end, and maybe change everything. His breath slowed, his hand steady, the seal glowing like the heart of a star, and Daniel whispered, "Then I choose fire." The flames roared around him, the shuttle bay shaking as if the world itself was breaking apart. Daniel stood in the center of the chaos, the seal blazing in his hand like a small sun. Soldiers surrounded him, their weapons raised, their voices, a single metallic chant, "Surrender the passage." But Daniel did not step back. His chest rose with a heavy breath. his eyes fierce with something stronger than fear. The scaled alien fought beside him, his roars shaking the chamber. Claws, tearing through armored foes. But even his strength began to fade, the swarm of soldiers endless, their shadows filling the firelit bay. Daniel's body trembled, sweat dripping, his arms heavy as if carrying mountains. The seal burned in his palm, its light bright and dangerous, its power ripping through his veins. Every second was pain, but every second also made him stronger. Then above the screams and gunfire, a new sound cut through the air, a sharp crash followed by a familiar voice. The alien girl staggered into the bay, blood on her shoulder, her blade glowing, her eyes fierce despite her wounds. She cut down, 2 soldiers in a flash, her voice ringing out. "I told you to run, human, but you stayed." Daniel's chest shook with a laugh that was half despair, half fire. "I don't leave people behind." The girl's lips curved in a small pained smile, but her eyes burned with pride. She stood beside him, blade in hand, ready to fight even with her body broken. And in that moment, Daniel realized the truth. The seal was not only a weapon, it was a bond. It had chosen him, but it also connected him to those who fought with him. It was not meant to be carried alone. The warships above rumbled, their engines shaking the ground. A voice boomed through the station's broken speakers. "Final warning, surrender or burn." Daniel's grip tightened on the seal, his voice sharp. "Then let's burn." The soldiers surged forward, a tide of steel and fire. Daniel raised the seal high, its symbols glowing brighter than ever. The girl shouted beside him, her blade slashing arcs of light. The scaled alien roared, his claws striking with fury. Together they pushed back the tide, step by step, breath by breath. The seal pulsed, the ground cracking under their feet, the walls shaking as if alive. And then it happened. The warships outside froze, their engines silenced, their lights dimmed. Every soldier in the bay staggered, their helmets flickering, their weapons falling silent. One by one they dropped to their knees, their visors glowing dim, their voices shifting. The bearer of the passage is recognized. Daniel stood in the center of it all, his chest heaving, his eyes wide with shock. The seal had not just been a key, it had been a command. It forced obedience not only from soldiers but from entire warships, entire clans. The girl stared in awe, her voice trembling. "They kneel to you, human. The seal has accepted you as its master." Daniel's stomach twisted, the weight of it crushing him. He had not wanted this, he had only wanted to help. And yet here he stood, armies bowing, warships silenced, power burning in his hand. The scaled alien lowered his head, his voice deep. "The human has become more than a traveler. He has become destiny." But Daniel did not feel like destiny. He felt the pain in his arms, the fire in his veins, the ache in his heart. He looked at the girl, her small figure trembling but unbroken. Her eyes locked on his. She whispered, "You changed everything, Daniel. You gave the galaxy something it never expected. Hope." Silence filled the bay, the fire fading, the soldiers still kneeling, the warships hovering in frozen obedience. Above, Daniel lowered the seal slowly, its light dimming, its glow steady but calm. For the first time, it did not feel like a curse, it felt like a choice. And Daniel knew then, he could run from this, or he could carry it, not for himself, but for all those who had no voice. His body weak, his breath ragged, Daniel stepped forward, his voice steady despite the weight. "Then hear me," he said to the kneeling soldiers, to the silent warships, to the galaxy beyond. "I am human. I am not your king, but I will fight to protect those who cannot fight for themselves." The seal pulsed once more, not in fury, but in agreement. The girl's eyes filled with something rare, hope. And as Daniel stood there, surrounded by enemies who now bowed, by allies who bled for him, he understood. A simple act of kindness had lit a fire that no warship could put out. Daniel, the human who bought a ticket for an old alien, had become the human who changed everything.